Welcome to another live stream. It's our time to get together. And we're gonna talk about a lot of things. We're gonna talk about the ordeal of gang stalking, and hopefully we'll get some people in here. I know that I don't set these up. I don't schedule them. You guys know why. Um, yeah, maybe one day we'll do that, and get some more interactions. You never know. But for now, well, this will have to do. And like I've mentioned many times, when it comes to gang stalking, there's just so many things to talk about, and I have a tendency to repeat myself. I'm not going to apologize for that because the whole ordeal of gang stalking is about repetition. It's about repetition and conditioning. Okay, and the thing about if you're a new target individual, the thing about it is you're gonna move into different facets of this activity. There's going to be a lot of variations and what you're dealing with, and there is going to be some repetition though. Okay, and I've gone through some of that before for the new targets, because I know for me it was one of those things that I think a lot of targets do. They underestimate what's going on. You know, you might even be confused as to what's going on. Well, I don't know if I'm one of those targeted individuals. This is probably some kind of psych job. It's a little game, maybe, hopefully. But for your sake, and for your sake, get a security system or get a body cam. If you're a new targeted individual and this stuff just started for you, and you happen to be one of those people that found this stuff, because it didn't exist when I started experiencing gang stalking. There was nobody to talk to. As far as I know, back in the early '90s, there wasn't anything out there. The whole thing was different. There was people talking about government conspiracies and different things, involving the occult and stuff like that, which can obviously be involved in gang stalking, but it was different. And if I had known, like all the other targeted individuals will say, if I knew what was going on, I would have had the body cam, or I would have had the security system, or I would have set up a little bug device or a listening device or something in my apartment, or in my vehicle or whatever, because it's so aggressive in the beginning, and you might be in that subtle stage where people are just saying strange things to you, or it seems like there's some kind of a collusion, but you don't know. You're not you're really up on what is happening, and you happen to stumble across this, or if you're listening now, take it serious, because you will assume that it's a game. It can be disguised as people just being cantankerous or fooling around with you, and you can mistake it for that until it's too late, until you realize the magnitude of what you're dealing with, the scope of the harassment that a lot of targets are dealing with. They go on the run, they can't get away, their family becomes involved. People are being manipulated. They get workplace harassment. They deal with the smear campaign. They deal with the excommunicado, the blackball, and their whole reality flips upside down. But it's real easy to underestimate this stuff, and you assume, even after maybe the first year or two, that they'll eventually get tired of it. They'll just stop, and it's not reasonable. This can't go on. I mean, I can't believe it's been going on as long as it has. It's not just gonna. These people aren't getting that much out of it, are they? I mean, and that's one of the conundrums that targets deal with. They get harassed, maybe at the convenience store, or at the grocery store, maybe at the dentist office, at work, maybe even when they're just going out to put some mail in the mailbox. What's the deal with all this anyway? They're getting brighted. They're dealing with all kinds of harassed strangers, people they don't even know. And one of the one of the first things that really freaks people out is, especially if you think that it's like a government program, how much money they put into this anyway. Targets will be accused of, being self-centered. But look at all the attention they're getting. Look at all these things that are going on around them. That's part of the game, right? They want you to be that way. They're getting in your head, right? They're giving you the gang stalking mind virus. They eventually want you paranoid and sensitized and conditioned, and they will use things in the environment around you, different activities that to other people would just seem coincidental, a lot of plausible deniability. But of course, that's part of the method. And there is a lot of ways that this can manifest. And I've talked a lot about the spiritual foundations of gang stalking and how it can move on down the line of puppetry. The people, because of course they need people to attack you, right? These aren't, illusions in the sense that you're in some kind of a matrix or you're a brain in a jar and somebody just flipped the program on you. And now, you think that all this stuff is good. It's real. But they want you reading into things. They want you paranoid. They want you looking for it. They want you processing information in a personal way. And eventually they want you to accept all the disinformation, and they want you to internalize this stuff as you move in to this process of gang stalking. Once you move into the spiral, into the mechanism that is already out there, you start to feel the effects. You start to look over your shoulder. You start listening to what people are saying. You're wondering if they're going to say something. Do they know? Who are these people anyway? You go into a restaurant. You experience food tampering. Maybe you get sick. Maybe it's serious. Maybe it's seems like a practical joke, and then it happens again and happens again. Pretty soon, it's everywhere. Well, you have to know what you're dealing with, and you have to know the motive. Seems chaotic. You're getting threats. People. One of the things that a lot of targets will talk about is the fact that they've really done anything. Doesn't seem to be any justification for it. Of course, all the people will be looking at them with scowls or laughing or snickering, or maybe even talking about something that has nothing to do with them. We know what you did. Targets will get branded as deviants, sexual offenders, drug dealers. And this is not true. It's simply not. But of course, they want you to be afraid. And they create a hostile environment around the target. They want to take your social mechanisms and support away. They want you to be isolated. They want you to be thinking about this stuff. And they don't want you to know what they're doing, how they are invading your mind and trying to condition you and reprogram you and get you into the place where they can mold you, gaslight you, drive you crazy, maybe even destroy you or get you to destroy other people. And it's quite the ordeal. The perps that you're dealing with, well, it can range into a lot of different areas. And I've talked about some of those people before. Maybe it's individuals in your social circle. Maybe it's people who are dressed up like the Men in Black. I've seen that before. You don't know where they're coming from. They seem to be following you around. They might show up in your neighborhood, talking to your neighbors, looking over at you. Maybe at your workplace, you see them driving away. Maybe they're just following you around. You think it's a coincidence first few times. Of course, they seem to be everywhere. I've had that, and it's done purposefully too, because people can surveil you without you knowing about it. There's plenty of technology, and like I've said many, many, many times, they want you to be looking. They want you to be apprehensive. They want to create the hypervigilance. They want you to be running for your life, wondering what is going on. And when you see these individuals, I've seen it before. It could be multiple people, it could be one person, and I mean, I've talked about the odds of something like that. I mean, there's people that I know that even deliver. Like I deliver for a living. I might see them maybe once, twice a day. That'd be pretty. Maybe even if I'm working a certain part of town, and I know that I might run into a few times. You know, but I might not. I might not see him for weeks. There's people that I know in this town that I've lived in off and on for over 30 years that I might run into, once every few years, right? And I'm in a lot of places as a delivery guy. I'm everywhere. I'm in the grocery stores. I'm in the convenience stores, and all the restaurants. If anybody's gonna, see you out and about, it's gonna be me. But that's usually about the pattern. But the individuals that you're dealing with, the guy that I was dealing with, I'd see him 10, 15 times a day. And there was no reason for him to be in the locations that I was at. And that's part of the plan. They want you to be aware. There are people out there who are dealing with harassment. I've talked about the covert agenda of psychiatry before, and some of the corruption that's out there. In fact, I've got videos in the playlist that illustrate the corruption. The Social Security Administration and insurance companies had to do an investigation into all these things, and it started back in the 80s very heavily, where people were, becoming dysfunctional, needing to be on permanent assistance, disability, SSI, so on and so forth. They looked into other countries where people were diagnosed with similar mental disorders, and they weren't becoming dysfunctional. They weren't being incarcerated coincidentally for the time period that the insurance company would pay, right? And of course, one of the things that targets will talk about along the lines of that is that you start talking about this stuff. Of course, there's the people that know and the people that don't know, and you can get discredited awful fast. And of course, with all the things that targets deal with, it's no wonder that sometimes they get angry, or they get scared, or they get anxious, and they become needy sometimes, and they can be provoked. And some of the people that they might go to the hospital, they were out drinking or something happened, there was an altercation, and maybe the police would get involved, and they would take them to the psychiatric center. And I've seen that happen before. Somebody will get too drunk and end up in the psych one for, I don't know, a day or two or whatever, or maybe even just overnight. And the doctor will be like, well, let's lay off the booze a little bit there. But what would happen, getting back to the corruption, is that these people would be diagnosed with something. The DSM is a whole lot of options out there for people. To everybody's crazy. And then, the insurance companies and the Social Security Administration noticed that a lot of these people were coming in with multiple diagnoses. You're schizophrenic, you're bipolar, you salivate at the sight of mittens, you're afraid of snow-peaked mountains. I mean, it's ridiculous. And, they looked into this stuff, and they found a lot of corruption. But these people would be falsely diagnosed. And then, of course, they would be medicated, maybe even heavily medicated, of course, for their own good. And then sometimes the sequelae of mental illness will be produced by the medication. And a lot of doctors were just trying to find out, how to help their patients. And if you look at the videos that I've got in the playlist, you'll see that they genuinely wanted to help these people. And they stumbled across, the whole idea of using medicine long term was actually causing dysfunction. It was creating disability in these people. It wasn't happening overseas and in other places that they didn't do that. They didn't incarcerate these people and drug them up. And it's not a coincidence. Okay, and a lot of targets will be confronted with that. You need meds. You need to be on meds. It's like, that's the go-to answer now in the West. Maybe they need to be medicated. Of course, that's the popular idea, right? They've created an army of psychiatrists, who are part of the campaign of the New World Order, in my opinion. And some of them know, some of them don't. It's like gang stalking. There's corruption out there, and there are people who know. There are people who have a lot of information on what you're dealing with. They might laugh at you or play little games or have a smart ass comment. I had a lot of that when I started. I hope you can make it through this. Make it through what? They'll have little, comments as you're going through the grocery line. Have fun with all that, and just remember, don't get angry, don't get paranoid. And you're like, who are you? But they're there. But with the corruption and everything, you have a lot of obstacles as a targeted individual. The mythos of meds. They found out that it's great for stabilizing people short term. Because I'm not against medication. If you think you need something for sleep or whatever, if you think you need something because you're anxious or you think you need help, you do whatever you want. Just be careful. Do the research on that stuff, because it's not uncommon for targeted individuals to get pushed to a place where they do deal with a lot of insomnia and anxiety and depression. It's only a natural reaction for the harassment that you're experiencing. People are stalking you, they're torturing you, they're humiliating you, they're degrading you, and you're all alone. It's not a stretch to become depressed. It happens to me. Sometimes anxiety can grip me. And then there's the physical stuff that the targets are dealing with, whether they're dealing with directed energy weapons or different things like covert poisoning, covert drugging, fuming, all kinds of things that targets deal with, the food tampering, just the stress that targeted individuals are under. It means their life is stressful enough. There's people out there that are contemplating suicide right now. Not that I'm saying that you should as a target individual, but they're not being stalked. They're not being harassed, and it's bad. It's bad enough for them to think about that. It's bad enough for them to grab some booze or drugs or just trying to get it out of your head. A lot of targets will get involved in substance abuse. I know I did. Started drinking, started taking tranquilizers, and I got addicted. I didn't research it. Of course, the information was covered up. It led to a 24-year nightmare. Be sure to investigate anything that you put into your body, especially if it's so-called long-term. But you have to traverse this landscape as a target. Like I said, there's people out there that they don't even know what's going on. There's probably people following them. They just don't know they're there. They may have installed equipment in their house, their vents, small cameras. They've hacked their phone. They might be experimenting on them, whatever. They have no idea. But targets, like I said at the beginning of the video, don't underestimate what's happening. It's one of those scenarios. I think Nicholas Bosman has mentioned that before. It's 2020, and hindsight always is a warning for all the new targets that are out there. And like I said, we're going to do some Q&A. I want to see who's out there in the community right now. Burger Boy, welcome. Oh, hilarious. Yeah, Mats and Miles, and it's the team, Mats and Miles. Well, welcome to the live stream, Steve the Pigeon, Bora Bora, Nicholas Bosman. Great to have you here. And let's see what's going on out here. Okay, yeah. Burger Boy says he's going to order some DoorDash tonight. Well, yeah, there you go. I can't afford to do that. Of course, I'm a targeted individual, so I can't eat out. Burger Boy, he's evidently not dealing with the food tampering. Oh, I can tell you stories about that. In fact, I just had to deal with that yesterday, and it wasn't fun. I got desperate, and I had to go get some food from the deli. And I don't know if I should go into the details, but we'll just say that I had to take an antidote and use the restroom a couple extra times. And then I had a little heart palpitation action and felt really woozy, had to pull over for a little while. But you know what? I'm okay today. But, I would ask for prayer for you guys out there. I've been dealing with some physical symptoms anyway in my health. I'm not going to mention what that is. And of course, I've been dealing with some other dilemmas. And sometimes it gets to me, like I said earlier. It's just, one of the things that we all deal with as targeted individuals is that this stuff is a cumulative. It is reciprocity. And it just builds and builds, and that's one of the things that you have to know as a victim of gang stalking, is that it's all these, everybody's got their part. I've mentioned that it's like a death of 1,000 cuts, and a lot of times targets will be gaslighted. Oh, come on, it wasn't that bad. Come on, come on, I didn't, I was just doing something, menial to you. Come on, cheer up. But, that was just their part. Right? They don't know about the noise campaign or the covert poisoning or the break-in that you had, or, somebody attacked your pets, or they, vandalized your property, or, drove by you and flipped you off. And it moves into that crescendo effect. And it's easy, to become overwhelmed as a target. And as you move through the landscape of gang stalking, one of the things that becomes clear after time passes is that, this stuff could be going on indefinitely. And you start to feel that doom, that hopelessness, and it happens to me. And you start becoming, vulnerable, at least, because as a target, you can't afford to be emotional. I talked about that before. You can't afford to be looking for this stuff either. That the max manipulation comes out of when you do become emotional. They want you to be looking for it. They want you to get angry, to get scared, to be humiliated, to feel the effects of the psychological, menagerie that is around you as a targeted individual. But it has that effect, and you can either move into depression, anxiety, or even become fierce. And of course, the whole idea of controlling you this way is well, they're not asking for permission. You're being subjected to this stuff left and right, and it can get pretty bad. And after the time passes, of course, you can experience that hopelessness. It happens to me. I would appreciate all your prayers out there. I think Burger Boy mentioned the Lord and prayer, and I appreciate that. Let's go into the comments again and see who else is out there. Firefighter, welcome. Okay, Jake Nord, welcome to the live stream. Bobby Lemonhead. Oh, okay. Well, I'll let the moderator. Maybe I'm not understanding that comment, but anyway, we'll move on here. Okay, and looks like I'm trying to read the comment from Mrs. Matson Miles, but we're gonna have to wait until somebody else comments because it's kind of halfway up there. And I almost imagine what is being communicated. When things get deep, you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, I'm going to guess. That's just be like playing one of those game shows here. You don't see how to make it through. Okay, all you need is love. They don't have that, and it's sticking here. Yeah, well, and your husband is lucky to have you. It's a rare thing for a targeted individual to have a partner. It's not something you see very often. I've been doing this for quite a while. Every now and again, there'll be a team player, and but that's a real man. That's a luxury that I think probably more than 90% of the targeted individuals out there don't have. It's so lonely as a targeted individual. Okay, we'll see what else is going on here. And let's see here. We got a comment. And firefighter says the Yale psychiatrist that oversaw my 72-hour psychological smear did nothing but gaslight and reactive abuse. Yeah, no care whatsoever. Yeah, and that's an important thing for targets to realize. And I've talked about that before. In fact, I mentioned earlier that I mentioned it in videos before, that there's a lot of different opinions out there, even concerning gang stalking, let alone people who are either indoctrinated by psychiatry or in on it, or you just don't know. And I've talked about Dr. Duncan before, and how he believes that less than 10% of the targeted individuals out there are really dealing with the technology that he puts forth in his material. Interesting stuff. I know Duncan does not hold to any of the spiritual application, as far as I know, and everybody's on their journey. I'm not saying anything about it, but a lot of times targets will be emboldened to talk about things, and individuals, like Duncan or Dr. Hall, and there's others out there that are coming out with material, and they're credible. You think that people will listen to you, even if you have evidence. I mentioned that before. I was in the psych unit before I went up to detox at the treatment center. It was kind of a protocol, and I spent some time there. And one of the individuals had evidence that somehow somebody got in and stole all the money out of his bank account. And the bank said, "We don't know what's going on. We can't explain it." He had the paperwork, but of course he was, he was just, told to keep calm. Come on now, it's a coincidence. There's all these coincidences around the target, right? And as far as what firefighter was talking about, that's always going to be the thing. It's going to be a campaign, or it's just, you're going to be minimized at every turn. Are you sure? Maybe these people are just not, maybe they're lonely. They just they're looking for a friend. They're socially inept, and they just don't know how to be nice to you. Maybe all these people, maybe you're just attracting the wrong crowd. Whatever. I've heard all of it. And then one of the things that I've also heard, do you, because I haven't ever told anybody about this stuff, but when I would talk about something, I've told a few ministers, and one of the things that I've heard before, because of course I had to go to doctors to get anxiety medicine, and they, well, what are you worried about? Of course I was going through the withdrawals. And what are you afraid of? Are you afraid you're going to die? Are you afraid you're going to have a heart attack? It's just a panic attack is all it is. You just, you don't need to take all these pills. Of course, like I said, I was going through the withdrawals, and then it would come down to, well, do you feel you deserve to die? Or I talk to the pastor, do you feel you deserve to have these people coming after? Is there something you've done? And it all goes back on you. And of course, that doesn't make any sense. And that's classic, for when targets try to explain this stuff. They're going to get minimized. They're going to get patronized. They're going to be humiliated. There's always plausible deniability. They're going to say, you're reading into everything. And a lot of targets end up reading into things, but it doesn't mean that they're crazy. It doesn't mean that they're making this stuff up. But to get back to what Duncan was talking about, the thing that hopefully he'll realize, and I believe that he's probably right. There's probably not a whole lot of people that are experiencing all that technological stuff. But I don't think they're crazy. Okay. I don't hold on to the mental illness thing, and he does. Of course, like I said, he's really not aware, or he's keeping his mouth shut about the spiritual dimension. And they're pretty nasty, So I know that a lot of people ask me, does your gang stalking get worse when you do? It does. Sometimes it does. But you hear people talking about that I'm getting V2K, or maybe, but you've got a huge percentage of the target individual community who's talking about the B2K thing. Are they all really dealing with that technology? I don't know. There is other possibilities. There is the spiritual possibility, and as I talked about prayer earlier, I'd like to emphasize again: if you're a target or an individual out there and you're dealing with gang stalking, or you're just new to this, that you would reach out to Christ and pray, draw near to God, because you're going to need help. And I do believe, at least that's just my personal opinion, that even if you are dealing with a government program, and there is stuff like that, MK Ultra and other things, sub programs, that it's spiritual at the root. This stuff is very wicked. And, you have to know that stuff. Some of the people out there, I think a high percentage of them that believe the government's doing all this with V2K and everything, I think they're literally dealing with probably demonic technology or literally spiritual stuff. That's, like I said, it's just my opinion. Not to use this example too many times, Chris Steger is a member of our channel, and he put his testimony out there that he fell off the wagon a little while ago, and his stalking got really bad for a couple of weeks or a little longer than that. But he also mentioned that he thought it was V2K. But does that really, for me, that's kind of, I don't know, it seems problematic, right? Why would the government just sit around and wait for you to, fall off the wagon and then use all this technology on you, right? Some people would speculate, well, maybe it's a behavioral modification program. Well, they do that kind of stuff. They do. I wouldn't deny that as a possibility, but it's also very plausible that you're dealing with some spiritual stuff. I know that when you get into the occult or you get into other things, and I've seen this, they will use drugs and stuff like that, depending, especially when it comes to meth or something like that. I've run into a lot of people that they play around with that stuff, and they do get possessed or oppressed very heavily. But wouldn't it be a possibility to assume that some of these things are literally demonic? And when we use an example like Chris Steger, by the way, I'd like to put him out there for prayer, Lord, that if he's still dealing with that heavy harassment, that he experience relief, and for all those out there in the target individual community who are dealing with persecution, that they would find peace that passes all understanding in the midst of their persecution, in the name of the Lord Christ. But why would they sit around and wait for that? Right. And when you're dealing with the spiritual dimension, there's a lot of people out there. I don't necessarily hold the deliverance teaching and stuff like that. Some of it, I think, is just, can confuse people. But there is different things that we all have to avoid. I've talked about as a targeted individual, you have to live your life above reproach, because, even something as simple as sitting out on your porch having a beer can come back on you. You don't even have to do anything. As a target, they're making up lies about you. There could be a smear campaign. I've had all kinds of things. I had people hiding beer cans, not only around my property and throwing, beer cans out on the, the lawn and everything, literally. But I had one guy come in and, I was, I haven't had a drink in, let me see, it's 11 years, a little over 11 years now. And I've, before, I would kind of, fall in and out of that every now and again, especially when I was still dealing with a tranquilizer addiction. I had a guy infiltrate and come in, and he, you can go ahead and drink, but I'm not going to have any. And he was literally, hiding them in my fridge and stuff for later that I would run onto him. That's I would just kind of be tempted, these little obscure places, behind the pickle jar or whatever there. Of course, I haven't really used a refrigerator for a long time as a target who's experienced break-ins and food tampering. But you got to make it look normal in case you want to throw some food in there for a little while. If people come over, forbid they start munching on it or something. But as a target, you have to live your life in a way that you want to avoid any of that stuff. But when you get involved in it, or when people talk about their experiences, maybe with astrology or the occult, or Ouija board or with drugs or whatever, sometimes the effects are like that. Sometimes people experience their first gang stalking episode when that happens. There was a gal who did a testimony out there. She's she doesn't consider herself a victim of spiritual harassment or gang stalking, but she ended up in a mental institution for a while. And she was someone who used to smoke marijuana on a regular basis and do, mushrooms and psilocybin and all these other things. And then she did, some mushrooms or something like that. And evidently, she just, wigged out. And then she went back to, her regular regimen of just, marijuana or whatever. And it didn't go away. And she couldn't shake it. She ended up, on meds. And then, had these weird things happen to her. And I believe she ran into some spiritual stuff. There's a lot of people that will talk about that. There's people out there that don't, you know. I'm not making any implications on any particular substance, but there are things going on, not only, in our legal world and our justice system, but in the spiritual dimension. And when I hear a story like Chris, or other people, maybe Stephen DeBeek or Jamie Tall, who's dealt with this stuff, to when they become involved in something that the demons start to harass them, that the people influenced by the spiritual dimension, they come out of the woodwork. I've seen it myself. And understanding that is important. I'm going to go back into the comments. Okay, looks like I've lapsed. Oh, that's right. I went up in the comments just seeing what's out there. Okay. All right. Interesting. Matson Miles says, most of the things I found were built into the construction of my home. They got all the time they most need. Let me see. I'm sorry. My no fear of getting caught. Very elaborate and planned, way ahead of the target. And interesting. Okay. Well, I've heard of that too. I thought you built a lot of the stuff in your house. That kind of threw me off for a minute. I thought maybe I was misreading that, Matson. But a lot of people will talk about devices. I think we discussed that in one of the live streams. People will hear, little buzzing noises or even electronic beeps, or they will deal with different things. Some of those are just there to, get you wondering what's going on, and then they'll mix all that stuff together and mess with your head. Or targets will talk about hearing voices coming out of vents. That's a very popular theme where targets will deal with that. I had something like that happen to me long time ago, and I've talked about that story. That I was introduced to black magic and stuff like that when I was probably about 13, and I was at a boys' school, and we all started playing around with this stuff. And I didn't think it was even real. I just, you want to have a seance, dude, and all these long-haired, little rebels were running around, and we did all this weird stuff. And then this guy came in, and he had actually read the Satanic Bible and all this weird stuff, and he's serious, right? And I'm thinking, oh, he's just playing the part. And we started doing some stuff. We started playing around. Strange things started happening. I started feeling really weird, and other people were, affected by this whole thing to the point where it kind of scared me. It more than scared me. And it was a Catholic place. It was like a little boys' school that was, for troubled teenagers. And they had a guy there, he was like a brother, and then they had the guy that came around. Anyway, I went and asked him, I said, is this stuff even real? And he said, oh, yeah. He said, you better quit playing with that, man. And I talked to him, and he said, don't ever do it again, And but anyways, the strange things kept happening, even though I went away from that stuff. And then I went up to an academy up in Minnesota, and everything was normal. And after, I don't know, I think it was like after a year I was there, this guy shows up from Minneapolis, and he was a skinhead. And of course, we had groups all the time, and this guy, he had to introduce himself to the group. We had different dorms and everything, and this is my name, I'm Dave, and I'm a Satanist. And I immediately could feel that weird stuff happening, because you could feel it. It's really weird. I don't really know how to describe it. A lot of people have different symptoms when I was doing that, messing around with that, but I could immediately feel it right away. And other things started happening up there to the point where It was really weird, but I actually had heard something right after that, literally like coming out of the vent. And I know it wasn't technology. It was something demonic, in my opinion. And then strange things started happening around there. People were freaking out. One guy locked himself in a bathroom and thought I was after him, which I didn't do anything. And another kid freaked out. And then there was a seance, or not a seance, an exorcism. And my name got brought up in the exorcism, and they ended up moving me into a room by myself. And it was just creepy. All these things were happening, and it all started, with a seance. It all started with that kind of thing. And but I've heard other people talk about that stuff, but you don't know. You don't know what you're dealing with. That's one of the dilemmas that target individuals deal with. They don't know whether they're dealing with something technological or whether they're dealing with something demonic, or both. Because I believe technology comes from the spiritual dimension, but as far as the devices and stuff like that Matts and Miles talk about, they will do that kind of thing. I've caught people, in my dwellings before doing something. I've seen things messed with. I think Matts and Miles mentioned things that looked out of place or whatever. You don't know. They might install speakers. I've had that happen before. I've told that story. It sounded like somebody was coming down the street with one of those loud stereos in their vehicle, the bass. And it was, basically what they were doing is they were just kind of, turning it up. And they wait till I'd lay down in bed, and they would, and it would just, sound like it was coming down the street, and then it would just be so loud, it would be shaking the whole trailer that I was living in. And it sounded like they're parked out in the driveway. And, as soon as I'd get up, I'd start walking, to see what was going on, of course. And it would fade away, right? And so I eventually got a camera, and there was no one there, right? And so I'm, by myself in the trailer, and I'm thinking, well, how do they know when to turn this thing up and down? It's one thing to turn a speaker on and mess with somebody. It's another thing, and this went on for weeks, to know that they're getting out of bed and moving down the hallway, and so they'd make it, like it was fading out, like it was too late for me to see who it was. How would they know that? Well, they obviously had a camera. There was some way that they could see me. All right, so I'm sitting in the living room and I'm yelling, "I'll, tear this place apart," and it never happened again. I can only imagine them sitting around laughing and enjoying the slapstick comedy of ruining my life and doing this. But they'll do that kind of stuff. Other stuff that may involve the fuming. I know Matts and Miles has dealt with that. And that's a reality. You can only speculate as to what is being used, as to what you're dealing with. Whether it's the fuming or the covert poisoning or other things. We've talked about the surfaces. A lot of targets will deal with that. They'll smear stuff on the door handles or whatever. It's nuts. And then you're dealing with the synergistic aspect of that whole thing, to where you could gaslight someone. I've talked about, and for those of you who don't know about that, synergistic is just it takes a multiple or a combination of things that come together before it turns into something significant. So if you're going to use that as a way to mess with someone, if you're going to covertly poison them or drug them or whatever, not necessarily that you're going to kill them like with cyanide or something, but you could do something. You can use their habitual lifestyle. For example, I read this in a book, by the way. I didn't just come up with this stuff. And the book was something my family had, and it also talked about how you could discredit someone by gaslighting and playing little games with them, and moving things around and doing all the stuff that targets deal with. But getting back to the synergistic aspect, you could use someone's habitual lifestyle. I've mentioned the cigarette thing. That's a good example, to where a target will all of a sudden find their cigarette pack tampered with or something. They'll still start it out slow. They've got to gaslight you, of course, discredit you, make you look crazy, and hurt you all at once, right? So you're thinking, well, I wonder what's up with that. And then you smoke one of the cigarettes, and you get this reaction, whatever it is. Your heart starts racing, or you experience the sequelae of some type of of chemical or something. It's making you sick, or you're having different effects, or whatever. And it's got to be the cigarettes, right? And so you take them to the cops, or you take them to the hospital, and you test these. I found, somebody had opened it up a little bit, and I smoked one, and of course, they have to know what they're looking for anyway. But even if they did, they're not going to find anything, because the chemicals, sometimes it could be multiple chemicals. They could put something in your hygiene products, or they could use just something on a door handle, and the combination of chemicals that are produced through the smoking process, along with whatever it is that they've introduced into your system, however it's been done, is going to create the reaction. So other people, I'll smoke a cigarette out of it right now. Yeah, I'll show you that there's nothing wrong with it. Of course, they might be the people in on it, and they're puffing away on it. Nothing. You're nuts. You're experiencing the symptoms of mental illness. Well, you say it's something's in your food? I'll eat it. Here, let me have some of that. My gosh. So you're obviously reading it, and of course, it's not going to affect them. People can come over. They can invite you to a barbecue, right? Set the whole stage, right? And gaslight the target. You're nuts. We all ate the food, and you can't figure it out. And it's just one more facet to the madness and the confusion targeted individuals deal with. There's a lot of gaslighting involved. And when, like Mattson talked about different devices and, getting in, or wait until you go on vacation, or, something happens or whatever. And there's a lot of, things involved in surveillance, and targets will deal with that to the point where they're afraid to even leave the house or keep food in the fridge or whatever. It's basically the way I've been living that way for quite a while. But it's a reality for people who are harassed. Everybody else just thinks you're nuts. There's a lot of targets that become agoraphobic. They will get you into the place where they can accuse you. They will cause dysfunction. They will sensitize you. They will cause, basically a post-traumatic effect on everything. You're mental. You're a coward, or you just got to grow up, or you got to put your boots on, or whatever. But it takes time for that to happen. And some targets, they go through this process. It's incremental, and they start to internalize this stuff. They start believing that about themselves. They forget all the stuff that got them the way they are. I'll go back into the comments again. Okay, we got a lot of comments out here now all of a sudden. Okay. Okay, Burger Boy says, I'm here and in my hands a book you need to see. Monarch, the New Phoenix Program by Marshall Thomas. Admittedly, I bought it not yet seeing this TI experience clearly yet. Well, that's good news, Burger Boy. You don't want to. And I would suggest that if you're not a targeted individual and you haven't experienced gang stalking, I know you got other channels and stuff like that. I wouldn't play around with this stuff if I were you. You don't want them to see you. It's a nightmare for real. And it's interesting. I could see that somebody's like, who are these people? What are they talking about all this stuff for? They've got to be mentally ill. They've got to be schizophrenic. There's no way. It's not possible for these things to be happening to people. I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it, man. If I had seen it for myself, I would believe that all these people were nuts. But it's not. The world is really that crazy. I've talked about the spiritual dimension. I've talked about the programs like Burger Boy mentioned, Monarch, and there's other things out there that have been, declassified, and we have whistleblowers, and it's real. Gang stalking is real. The problem comes in when you have targets who are experiencing the effects of harassment. We've been talking about that a lot. And you see somebody making videos, assuming they're not a shill, and you know that the stuff they're making in their videos, it's not gang stalking. That accident scene wasn't set up for you, dude. Those people aren't, you're walking in front of their house. Of course they're looking at you. You're the stalker now. And it happens to targets. They become desperate. They want evidence. They want affirmation. You got to believe me. Nobody believes me. These things are really happening. And as soon as they get the body cam and they go out there, they start doing this or that, and then, well, it's just not there. And it's easy for targets to start processing information in a personal way. That's what they want. And it's one of the accusations that comes at targeted individuals. Well, you think the whole world's revolving around you, but it's for a reason. You weren't even looking for this stuff before. You weren't worried about that. I didn't even lock my doors. I didn't. I wasn't worried about stuff like covert poisoning or food tampering or devices like Matt's and Miles talking about fuming or harassment or smear campaigns. Or I don't worry about any of that stuff. I wasn't worried about the occult, none of it. And now it's just a reality for me. It's really what's out there. It was there the whole time. But now, you've been attacked by that stuff, and the last thing you want to do is deal with it again. The last thing you want to do is have it take you by surprise, but it's there. And, I've talked about the fact that, targeted individuals are a very small minority of the population. They wouldn't work otherwise. It just wouldn't. Everybody, it would be normal. It's like now, they want the drag queen story hour and everything for all the kids. I mean, it's just, you couldn't get it. You wouldn't even have dared try something like that back in the 70s. They would have locked you up in jail. Right. But now, that kind of stuff has become normalized. You couldn't talk about that stuff even back in the 80s. People would shame the individuals who are on the LGBTQ crowd. Now it's just everywhere. Yeah, it's a story hour. Why not? We're not trying to indoctrinate little kids into becoming drag queens. Come on, it's a story hour. Of course, it's very unhealthy, and a lot of people might not appreciate that example. But as that has become normal, and it's not normal, if you're dealing with that kind of problem out there, I'm not condemning you. Christ can set you free, but it becomes normal ad populum. And the more people that deal with something, it loses its effect, right? It's not a taboo anymore. And gang stalking it just wouldn't work. You want to use it to silence the whistleblower, or you use it for coercion. You don't want to be that person. Oh, you want to go ahead and divulge the secrets of the fraternity? I dare you. Yeah. I got a nice little straitjacket for you, just waiting. Yeah. Got some meds. Yeah, the men in white coats will be taking you away. It's like that old song on Dr. Demento. You guys remember that one? Coming to take me away to the funny farm. Yeah. That I missed that show. That was good. But anyway, let's see what else is in the comments. All right, let's see what else is out here. Firefighter says, I didn't believe in the devil until gang stalking began. I straightened up once I realized who Yahweh was. That's right. For any of you who don't know who that's the God of Israel. That's who made you, Yahweh. And like I've mentioned before, if you're a targeted individual, you're going to need strength. You're going to need help, and we all need it anyway. People who are not targeted individuals are headed to the same place. Unfortunately, for targets, they're going to be dealing with some very adverse circumstances. But if that's what it takes to wake people up, like Firefighter said, well, you win. Gang stalking can be beneficial in that way. There's people out there that they're not dealing with the stuff you're dealing with. In fact, that's one of the things that targets deal with. It's all the lateral comparisons that are out there. It just seems like everybody's got it easy, and you're the only one dealing with all this harassment and crazy stuff, adverse, hostile, abrasive circumstances, and it's frustrating. The sense of injustice will build. And you don't know what's going on. And if you're a believer targeted individual, there's a menagerie out there for you. Oh, I don't deal with that kind of problem. Jesus, he just makes me happy. Yeah, yeah, I feel ecstasy all the time, and I don't know. Maybe you sure you're not involved in sin? You sure you're really a believer? Did you lose your salvation or something? And you get accused of all these things. Of course, you don't know, right? It's like the prosperity gospel. You see all these individuals who are rich and they're not dealing with any, poverty, or they're talking about health and all that stuff, which I'm not saying that God can't bless people, but the Bible's very clear that when someone says that godliness is a means to gain, they are of a depraved mind. Okay. Paul said, silver and gold I do not have, but rise and walk. And, when you deal with the prosperity gospel, that's really out there to steal money from people, right? But it's also used to confuse the hell out of people, because there are real Christians who may or may not be targeted individuals who, it doesn't seem like they can get healed, right? Their business wasn't blessed. They gave their $1,000 seed offering to the minister. They've been tithing, which is not, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with it, but you're not obligated to do that. You're not under the law as a Christian now. And the money tree didn't sprout in the backyard. I wonder if God, maybe he hates me. Or you get into Calvinism. Maybe I'm just not one of the elect. There's all kinds of confusing things out there. And the lateral comparisons, well, they just bolster the whole thing. Maybe I'm cursed. I don't know what's going on. Maybe God hates me. It's frightening. Other people, well, I don't worry. I don't live in fear. You're living in fear. You get accused of things. You don't know what it's like to be a target individual. Target individuals deal with a very hostile and abrasive set of circumstances. But like I said, the truth about it is when you look in the Bible and you see what's happening, maybe Psalm 73, when the servant of the Lord saw the the prosperity of the wicked, his heart almost failed until he saw the end of them. And of course, it goes through a whole list. Their crops aren't touched. Their families seem to be healthy. They grow old. They don't deal with afflictions. Everything seems to be fine for them. Of course, the devil's not persecuting them, right, firefighter? He's not after them, but he's after you. He's after the real Christians. He's after people that he has his sights set on, and he knows how to create the menagerie. The kingdom of darkness knows how to set the stage, right? And of course, it's very confusing. But if that's what it takes to wake up, then that's a good thing. But rather than to feel neglected, rather than to look at it as a curse, once you see the obvious lateral comparisons out there, whether it's people in the mob or corrupt politicians or whatever, they got money, they've got all that stuff. They're evil. Or you look around your community, there might be people who've been convicted multiple times of the crimes that targeted individuals are accused of perpetrating, and yet they're not experiencing gang stalking. Very, very, very inconsistent. And of course, the gaslighting involves that for targets. You're this, you're that, you're a second-class citizen, you deserve it, you're a freak, whatever. You're on the outside looking in. You're not good enough. You're the person that you love to hate, and God doesn't love you either. And of course, it's frightening. And you have to look at it in the the lens of reality. The fundamental reality in the scriptures is that many are the afflictions of the righteous, right? And the other obvious contradictions would say that maybe this whole thing is a blessing for you, rather than to look at it as a curse or some type of mysterious fiery trial or affliction, or maybe it's because of that thing you did when you were a child, or you sinned, or the wrong thought coming to you. Maybe God is just blessing you. Maybe he's allowed it to come your way to improve you. And like I said, if that's what it takes, well, it's better than going to hell. That's for sure. Okay, let's see. Well, it looks like Nicholas Bosma is talking about noise harassment, huh? I think you must have some dialogue going up there. I haven't saw the context of it. Let me see here. Okay, I noticed, but Nicholas Bosworth says, I noticed that they're smart that way. Once they got me hiding out in my house with soundproofing all over the walls and windows, that's when the fuming and particulates started coming through the floor. Oh, yeah. That's horrifying. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's, I mean, there's a lot of targets out there that they would say, well, I've never dealt with a VGK. I've never dealt with a fuming. I've never dealt with this. I've never dealt with that. But they're probably reacting to the other stuff. When a target becomes seasoned, when you move through this landscape as a target individual, the directed conversation, stuff like this, is just evidence. This, this is real subtle. And of course, you got to have very strict criteria, but you get obvious harassment. It's just a bonus. I've talked about that. If you have a really bad day of targeting and things are just over the top and crazy, and I know it sucks, but instead of looking at it, in a bad ways, I mean, you have to keep it in mind. This stuff can go on for a long time, and they will try to gaslight you. They will try to say you're nuts. Try to get some evidence. It's like the 11 flat tires in 2.5 weeks. My buddy said it was less than, it was more like 2 weeks. So I think it was 2.5. Is that even possible? I've never heard of it. I get a couple flats a year or something. There's nothing wrong with that. I've gone years without a flat tire, right? Delivering all over the place, alleys, parking lots. 11 in a damn less than a month. Really? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so, man. But targets will deal with that, and it can be used as something that's good, it's positive, because the subtle techniques that targets are going to be dealing with will drive you nuts. But the resilient targets who don't get affected by that, well, they will. They'll start doing that. They'll start fuming the target or using the direct energy weapons or whatever, the demonic stuff. It'll get more intense. And I've talked about the fact that they will try to critique the targeted individual in a way where they form you in your mind and get you into different propositions. And some of that has to do with faith. Some of it has to do with your disposition. You could look at it like a computer code, right? The positive being 0 and the negative being 1, and it'll start out 0, and then it'll move incrementally into the other spectrum of that. And of course, it eventually turns all negative 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1. And then, of course, your attitude and everything is going to change. And then the accusations start coming. You're paranoid, or you're losing your faith, or all these other things are happening, or you're losing it. You're losing it, man. But it's a type of environmental incremental assault. Not only are you dealing with a fear campaign as a targeted individual, it's a psychological nightmare. It's this heavy manipulation. Let's see what else is out there. Susan Dodd, welcome to the live stream. She said, I worry about my pets. One was already killed by the dog sitter, and I don't even want to read the rest. That's horrible. Oh my gosh, that's horrible. Well, we're just going to put a prayer out there for all the targets who have pets, especially mine. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, please, Lord, don't let anything happen. And for Susan, that she'd be comforted and try to put that in the past. Oh, that's horrible. These people are just ruthless. I had a rabbit, his head smashed, and when they put him crucifixion style in my yard, I actually called the cops on that one. I've had a police report made on that. But they'll do that stuff. They'll get into your house and stab your fish. I had all my fish stabbed with something. You find them floating around with their swim bladder popped, and they sink down to the bottom. Of course, what are you going to do? Euthanize them? You got to feed them, because it's like the tactics they used in the Vietnam War. They wouldn't kill someone, they would wound them, and then everybody else had to take care of the wounded person. And you're going to watch them die. It affects people psychologically, and it takes up resources. Yeah, that's horrible. Okay, let's see here. Oh, Rise to Power, welcome up. Welcome uptown here to the Gangstalking live stream. And Steve Wells, welcome to the live stream. Targeted Pat, welcome to the live stream. You always join late. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to end the live stream here very quickly. But I want to take a few questions. Anybody have a question out there? Throw it at me. I'll give it some time here. And Targeted Pat says, my two pit bulls slept together every day for the last couple of years. Last week, when they unexplainably started trying to kill each other. Oh, wow. That's, it could be a lot of explanations. It could be something spiritual. It could be some type of, covert poisoning or something that's altering their mental state. There was a guy that I used to know who said he fed his dog gunpowder and it just made him ornery. I don't know if it's true. I haven't looked into that. I don't look up stuff like that because, of course, I'm not going to do anything like that to an animal. But wow, I mean, you just don't know what would, I've heard stories like that. In fact, there was a Catholic priest who was talking about his experience with exorcisms, and he was talking about the criteria that they use to decide whether somebody's just nuts or whether they're really dealing with some type of spiritual infestation or possession or oppression. And there was a gal that was heavily into the occult, and rather than to make an appointment, one of the people in the Catholic parish just brought this girl right over to this dude's house, right? And it was against the rules, but what's he gonna do? And the night before that, though, evidently, the guy had two cats. I think I'm telling the story right, but they got along. It's kind of like what Targeted Pat was talking about. And all of a sudden, they woke up. Him and his wife, the Catholic priest and his wife, woke up, and the cats were there you can see a little spat. Sometimes they'll get into a little, disagreement or whatever. But I guess they were just, they had to rip them apart. Blood. They got injured. These cats were just, going at each other. It was just nuts. And it was like the middle of the night, 3 in the morning or whatever. Scared the hell out of everybody. And you see in a cat, they get loud. They make noises. Sometimes it's it just sounds surreal anyway. It's horrifying. They get a lot of cat fights around here until they started killing them. But that girl comes over, and one of the criteria that you deal with deciding whether somebody is really dealing with something spiritual is they will know things they're not supposed to know. Or they'll speak in a language or whatever, or sometimes they'll levitate, or they'll, have, all these different, spiritual phenomena around them. And this girl was never, she didn't, she would have had no knowledge of that, and said, how'd you like the cat fight last night? With a sadistic smile on her face. Just freaked him out, They ended up doing an exorcism on her, and evidently it was successful. Sometimes it takes many exorcisms. I don't hold to, I don't hold to Catholicism, and I don't know necessarily whether I agree with the whole title of exorcist or not. But there's things that I don't know. There's things I'm wrong about. But you got to deal with something. You got to deal with it. But you just never know. You never know as a target individual. I appreciate the input. Let's see if anybody's got a question out there. Okay. Oh, Targeted Pat says that he's pretty confident that their aggression is a result of some type of confidential experimental weapons technology. You never know. You don't. Okay. And Rise to Power asked me if I've ever heard of the Tartarian Empire. Honestly, I never have. Either that or I'm forgetting it. Somebody asked me about the Tavistock Institute, and my mind went blank, and I totally forgot that I studied that stuff. I'm thinking I've never heard of it, but I may have. Sorry about that. Rise to Power. Okay. Well, I'm not getting any questions. Sure you guys don't have a question out there? I'll check that out, Rise to Power. Yeah. Strange Man says they can influence people who say they can't influence animals. I'm assuming you're talking about the spiritual dimension. Well, of course, we have the biblical example of the demoniac. I've talked about that before. A lot of people don't understand, what that was all about. When Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee, and they met him there. And some of the versions says one person or two. That's irrelevant to me. But evidently, this individual was possessed by a legion of demons. Some people take that up to 2,000, as far as different interpretations of what a legion would be. But it was a lot, and this guy was obviously suffering the sequelae of a very horrific possession. He was living, running around naked and cutting himself with stones, and they tried to chain him up, and this guy would literally break chains that no human could break. And in that area, coincidentally enough, there was a lot of idolatry, which is later when you see the request of the spirits, the unclean spirits, that started talking to Jesus, right? Because there are a lot of people say, well, they ran over there because they were going to attack Jesus. No, they weren't going to attack him. And a lot of people don't know what he was accomplishing. Of course, the seed of the woman that's referenced in the Garden of Eden moves all the way through the purpose of God's election to bring forth the Christ, to make atonement for the sin of man, and to reconcile everybody to God through the lineage of Abraham. And of course, the Jews knew that there was going to be a Messiah. The Pharisees actually obfuscated the fact that it was going to be God incarnate. A lot of people don't know that when Jesus referred to them as the synagogue of Satan, I believe that's what he was referring to, and they were called the sons of darkness. They changed the calendar to a lunar calendar, and they obfuscated the passages that had to do with Melchizedek, which specifically in the Dead Scroll 11Q13, the king of righteousness, or the king without lineage, or the teacher of righteousness, which is Jesus. Okay, so they knew, but they obfuscated that. The order of Zadok and the Essenes, they had the solar calendar, which let all the feast days and everything be exactly what they were supposed to be. But they obfuscated that stuff, and they were all fighting. The Sadducees, I think it's in Ezekiel, you'll hear a scripture talk about God has forsaken the earth. Well, that's not really true, but they believed that, and it had to do with the different idols and so on and so forth, and the things that these people were dealing with, as far as the heretic, the heresies that they were dealing with. The Sadducees didn't believe in life after death. The Pharisees changed the calendar and obfuscated the reality of the Messiah, God incarnate, and the Essenes went down to Egypt. So they knew that one day that there was going to be someone, and it was illustrated in Psalm 82, where the principalities were judged. Of course, the principalities had control over the nations except for Israel, because God, after the Tower of Babel, disinherited the nations and started over with Abraham. Okay, and so it was cosmic geography. It's like some of the stuff target individuals talk about, where they move into different areas and they deal with different things. And there's different principalities over the different nations. You'll see different pagan religions here and there, and so on and so forth. It's not by mistake. Or in the book of Daniel, when you have Michael the archangel that had to intervene so the angel that wanted to talk to Daniel could get through. And it's just, you have all this cosmic geography. And when Jesus went over the boundaries of that territory, and he went across the Sea of Galilee, they knew, and they didn't know, because there's judgment pronounced in Psalm 82. That their immortality was revoked. Of course, the unclean spirits were already disembodied, and they knew that eventually they would end up in the Abuso, or the Abyss, or Tartarus. But they didn't know, and they knew the Messiah was coming. They didn't know the plan. They didn't know what Jesus was up to. And they met him right there, and they said, what do you want with us? We know you're the Holy One of God. And of course, they asked that Jesus would not cast them into the abyss, into the Abuso, into Tartarus, and that they could go into the swine, right? And like I said, that was those pigs were actually used in the pagan sacrifice and idolatry. So it was real coincidental. But they do. There's all kinds of different things that are evidence as far as the spiritual dimension doing that, where animals can be affected. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. So you don't know. You don't know what you're dealing with. Okay. All right. Well, guys, like I said, I do have to get going, and it's been a pleasure having all of you in here. Hopefully, that someone was edified. If you're a new target or an individual, don't give up and take this stuff serious. And remember to pray and ask Christ for help. Draw near to God. We're all going to be judged one day. We're all going to appear before the judgment seat of Jesus. And there is a heaven and there is a hell. And like Firefighter said, he woke up to the reality of the devil and the kingdom of darkness. And if you're out there and you're not sure of that, I would pray that you consider that and look into these things and take advantage of the opportunity that you have, seeing the evil around you in this world and all the activity that, in my opinion, would more than suggest that there are people being manipulated demonically and all kinds of evil around, whether it's the secret societies, whether you're dealing with the occult, whether you're dealing with the evil government programs and technology that, in my opinion, comes from the spiritual dimension. We've really accelerated in our technology in the last few hundred years, and I don't think that's by mistake. And the book of Daniel talks about that. In the end time, technology is going to increase, and men are going to run to and fro. Not only are the prophecies going to be revealed, but technology is on the rise. And I'd like to thank everyone for participating in the live stream. I'd like to thank everyone who helps support me and the channel. The link is always in the description. And don't forget to hit the like button, share, and subscribe. God bless. Be good to yourselves. Be safe.